Hey guys, it's me again, coming on strong. Hope you guys are feeling blessed no matter where you are. So, it's been about a week since I've made a video, and there's reason for this. I don't know about you guys, but my last video that I was talking about was all the different things that have been going on in the world. And for some reason, first I want to foremost say thank you to all of my patrons, to all my subscribers, from my day ones to my day nows. But I was going through all of that with you guys in the last video, and I couldn't help but feel a kind of softness and a kind of release that I couldn't explain, because with everything that was going on, I didn't feel fear and I didn't feel any type of trepidation or worry for what is to come. And some of you may know what I'm saying. Some of you may have the same feelings. And I asked, this was right before April 1st, actually. I asked, what is going on? Like, why do, seemingly the whole world's in flux, and I feel like the most strongest or the most excellent or the most free I've ever felt. And I heard the initiation has begun, or the initiation begins. Now, for some of you out there, we've been on a journey for some time, right? Like, it's been at least 2 to 3 years for me. So when I heard the word initiation, I was like, seriously? I'm like, I thought that happened all this time back, and I ended up biting my own words, because I swear only God can make things make total sense when they need to make sense. Okay, so this is another story about God's plan today. This is going to be a solemn one, so I hope you guys have the ears to hear, because what I'm about to tell you might be a little gruesome, but has a point. And for those of you out there that might be feeling the same way I feel, or for those of you out there that actually are going through this, you can see more of me, I guess. And I don't know. Is that better? I don't know. So, as you guys know, I'm a higher self channeler. That's what I do for a job. Now, I must preface this by saying that when I first came on this journey, okay, this was all these years back. I think you guys may have known that I said that I got left, me and my son and the dog got left years ago, and it was one of the most traumatic and hardest things I ever had to go through, or at least I thought so. And when I was on my knees reaching out, hoping that someone would help me at that time, God stepped in, and I finally got reconnected with God after 13 years of what I would call hell. And what I mean by that, and for those of you that don't know what I believe hell to be, hell on earth anyways, is that even hell, the actual place, I believe truly, is you reliving your sins, you reliving your guilt, and being afforded that same cycle over and over and over again, never being able to release it, never being able to overcome it, and to never surpass those feelings of hardship and hatred and anger and suffering. That's what I qualify as hell. And I was going through a version of that for 13 years and before I came on this time. So there's a reason for my story, and please just follow along, because this will make you guys understand what this initiation is. And I don't think it's just for me. I think it's for all of us out there that are in the initiate process. So I have to describe this story so that you guys can take and pluck that nugget of truth for yourselves, so that you guys can relate it to yourselves and see if this is what's happening for you too. So when I came on the second time, we have to understand that we always have to surrender to God's will. And at that moment, I finally realized I was finally out of that trap. And I was willing to do whatever it took, whatever God asked of me, to do, to ask, to say, to be. And really, as we go on this journey, we realize that God's not really asking anything of us other than to surrender who we are. Surrender meaning to ourselves, meaning like surrender all the falsities, surrender the 3D, surrender all the masks we wear, that we have kept our ego intact. Okay? So when I first came on, all I said to God was like, I'll do whatever. I don't care. I mean, it'll be hard, but I don't care. And I just prayed that the only thing I don't know if I could handle is if it had to subject my son or my mom, because this is my path and I don't want anything to come to their way. It's only for me to endure, me to go through. And that's all I prayed to God about. And since then, in these years, I've relinquished and rid of many, many friends, hundreds. Okay. Some were foes that I found out later wise. And that's what I mean by surrender. You have to surrender all the persons that don't do you any justice, don't subscribe to where you're headed in your soul journey. And as you release parts of yourself, you naturally release all of those reflections that no longer reflect who you are truly on the inside. And as I rid of all those persons, the next step that God asked me to do was to relinquish and to surrender my career. I was a law clerk for a pretty prestigious law firm here in Toronto. And I was at the forefront of not understanding what that meant. But as that New Year's passed, I was visited by Yeshua, and Yeshua showed me that I had a gift and I needed to use it. Now, I've never used that gift before, and here I have God asking me to give up my career. Now, some of you might be like, oh yeah, sure, and some of you are like, oh no, I couldn't. But you have to understand that I knew what I had signed up for. I knew that this was the next step. And even though I was a brand new mom, I had no more partner, I just spent, I had no money coming in. It seemed like the most far-fetched thing to do. But I knew, because of the blind faith that is necessary in the surrendering, that it was what I had to do. So I did. And a blessing did come, because I ended up getting a settlement from that law firm because of what I did. And at the same time, I realized that with every surrendering of self, it's all to make ourselves better, to truly self-realize what we're capable of without all of these 3D tangibilities to fall back on. So I let go of the career. I follow along Sue. I follow God's path. I follow God's plan. And I just keep trucking along. I keep making these videos, even though for years you guys saw I had 50 subscribers and 72 subscribers and 100 subscribers. Still to this day, I'm only at 1,000, but thank you. You know what I mean? Because I was in an even different state about a year ago. And the thing is because I know some of us are not for everybody. Because again, there was an aspect to who I am that can never conform to trying to be the conformist for all. My words, what I'm asked to put forth comes through me from God and from either the masters or from the angels or whatever I'm asked to do. So I'm not here for to gain fans, and I'm not here for everybody. I might just be here for a few, and that's my role. And I have to be okay with that. But I want to explain that was a form of surrendering, because not for nothing, I'm not, dense. And I know that there's easier ways to build a fan base. And I chose myself to stay true to who I am, to not ever fall into that, because I was realistically, if this is who I am and this is what I speak, and let's say not so many people grasp onto it, I'm not for them, So I kept trucking along on that. I'm starting in a whole new career. And this goes on for a year and a half now, right? And all along, never knowing where my next step was going to lead, I have not wanted or needed anything. And I want to say that when I was in my old career, any of my careers, any of my jobs, in that 13 years of minutia of hell on earth, there was never going to be any joy like there is for me these days. There's never going to be any like true bliss that I felt in this last years. And I can honestly say it was through the idea of surrendering. It was through everything I was ever asked to do. Now, how this falls into the initiation thing. So all of this time I'm surrendering and surrendering. Whatever I'm asked to do, I surrender. Whatever I'm told to say, I say it. Whatever I'm asked to be, I'm being it. And at this point, it's second nature to me. I live, eat, breathe, sleep, all of my steps from the Lord and from God. If it's not in line with what I'm being told to do, I don't do it. Okay? And this is just my life now. This is just who I am. I even surrendered relationships, like physical ones. I became someone that I never thought I would be. And I'm so much more grateful for it. I have the capability of discerning and knowing who's really for me, something I never would have had. And I'm so grateful for that. So as the world continued to get more chaotic and more crazy, more weird, seemingly, you know what I mean? Like everyone I would see would be like, Ray, 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 rah, rah, rah. And I would always try to bring light to situations. I would always try to explain, we're ascending. This is what's supposed to happen. Our Lord is coming back. Everything has to be turned upside down, giving everybody the opportunity. People, either naysayers, whatever the case may be, at this point, I don't care. At this point, I'm just here to show and spread the word and spread love. And that's all I can do, right? And I surrender that. I surrender everything I am to the Lord, everything I am to God. And I continue on and I continue on. And all this time, all I've ever said is, as long as it doesn't touch my son, as long as it doesn't injure my mother, my son, I'm all for it. So when this last week showed up and everything was eerily crisp and eerily beautiful. And what I mean by that, it was like, there was no fight or flight for me anymore, because some of you that are ascending are going to find that you're in a fight or flight mode right now. Maybe you were a year ago. There comes a point where you do your trials, you continue on your trials, that you get to some form of, not plateau, but you get to a placid surrendering point where you're just like, wow, like everything I need is here. Therefore, I am justly okay, and you don't have to fight anymore, and you're not battling anymore, and you're in acceptance of self, and you don't feel any ways about anything, about anyone. You just love everyone and know that they are where they are, and you just try to be with them where they are. And that speaks volumes to where maybe some of us started, and it speaks volumes to where we're headed. And it was all by design. I know that if you saw my videos in past, at like the beginning stages, I had anger, I had malice, I had fury, I had, needing to find justice in my heart. And at this point, it's like I've released all of that. I've surrendered all that, because it doesn't matter. Like if I get justice, or if I am right, or if I am seen a certain way, it doesn't matter, because realistically, like I said, all of us are just walking in God's steps, in Jesus's direction. So whatever everyone else is thinking or feeling, or imposing against you, isn't really your purpose. So when I asked what's going on, this is like super tranquil. Not that I'm saying that we shouldn't be in that place, but it was just a little more than average. I was like, something's up. Me, I'm always reading the energy. I'm like, something's up. And I heard the initiation begins. So this is where it starts to get eerie. This is where it starts to get weird. And if this happened to you, I'm going to say that if you are being initiated, you are going to get a trial or a version of a trial that puts you in a place of sheer fear. And it's very hard to scare most of us, but it is going to come from a place of truth. So if you recall, I said to God when I first came on, I go, as long as it doesn't injure my mom and my son, I'm all for this. So the scenario that got posed on me, April 1st shows up. I get a weird call. I get a call from a new potential client, right? And I get calls all the time, people asking me about what I do and booking appointments and whatnot. And this man asked me, what makes it so that I should use your services? And I was like, well, if you've shown up to call on me, I'm probably the person you need to meet. And that's all I said to him. So the man asked me a weird question. He said, if I asked you one question, would you do that? And I was like, it isn't really what I do. I'm not the typical psychic. I'm here to do this version of healing, and I don't know if this is in my wheelhouse. And he was like, oh, I just have one question. And I'm like, okay, I'll hear you out. What's the question? He goes, do you think I could find out if I'm the father of my girlfriend's child? So I sat there with that, and I was like, well, I can't guarantee anything. Just give me your name. I'll see what I can see. And if there's anything worthwhile, I'll give you a call. So I get off the call immediately. The name this person gave me was wrong. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was incorrect. I knew he was lying. And that was, red flag number one. But I sincerely asked out to my guides. I was like, what do you want me to tell this guy? And usually when there's nothing to tell someone, I'll just call them back and be like, look, I'm not the right person for you. But I got 3 statements. The 3 statements were, you're not the father, her smile melts your heart, and you would still be there regardless of the answer. That's what I got. So I called the gentleman back, and I said to him, look, I'm not going to charge you. I'm not interested in telling you anything because I don't think I got much. And I said to him, I go, you know what? I go, you didn't give me the right name, so it's kind of hard to really tap into your Akashic, into your higher self, to speak with your higher self. So I was like, I think this is where we end. And he was like, no. He's like, I'll pay you regardless. He's like, what did you get? And I was like, no, it's really not worth it. I really suggest. And he's like, no. He's like, I said I'd pay you, and you said you came up with something, so please go ahead. So I was like, okay. I'm like, well, for first starts, I was like, you're not the father. And I said to him, I'm like, I'm sorry to say that, but that's what I got. And all the man wanted to do was tell me a story. Now, I tell him he's not the father. He starts going on about his relationship with his girlfriend. I also felt that this girl, through the conversation we're having, is quite young. The man I'm talking to, I would say, is in his late 50s. And I'm literally sitting there going, oh, this could be like a sugar baby situation. This could be like a younger woman with an older man. That's why she doesn't want to tell him if he's the father or not. And he said this one line after I go, the only other thing I heard was that her smile melts your heart. And he goes, oh yeah. He's like, all she has to do is smile at me and go, Daddy, can I have this? And I'll just hand her over the credit card. And all of a sudden, the inside of my gut was like, ugh. Because the sheer shrill feeling I had was that this girl was really young. So I sat there and I was like, I've got to get off this call. And this man just went on to tell me about how much he loves her and how it doesn't matter if he's the father. And I told him, I'm like, obviously you don't think you are the father because you wouldn't call me if you were 100%. And he was like, oh, she's going to be going to the doctor, so we're going to find out for sure. And I said, okay. I'm like, well, thank you. I'm like, I'm going to head off. I get off the call. I tell myself, I would go, I don't even want this guy's money. I didn't even send the PayPal exchange. I just felt really irked about the call. And all of a sudden, I thought to myself, what if this girl, because in the midst of that conversation, he had said something along the lines like she lost a baby before and it was due to gymnastics. And he said, you know how little girls love gymnastics. And I couldn't let it go. Something in me was like, there's something wrong with this guy. I've got to figure this out. So I ended up calling a cop friend of mine, and I said, if someone wants to report potential pedophilia, what would they do? So she gives me a phone number. And she goes, do you have his email? And I go, no, I didn't charge him because I was so grossed out by the call. And all of a sudden, she's like, if you get a chance, she's like, charge him, try to get that email. The cops can triangulate it better. It would really help. So here I am, literally saying to myself, like, fuck. Like, I need to go back in. I need to go and message this guy again about the payment, because that's the only way to get him on the hook again and maybe get this email and maybe figure something out for this potential little girl. So I go back and I shoot him a text and I'm like, hey, by the way, you did say that you would pay, even though I had no interest in the money. And he was like, oh, yeah, no problem. He's like, when my daughter gets off of school, I'm not really good with PayPal or e-transfers. I'll have her help me out. And I was like, okay. This was hours later. I'm telling you, there's a point to this story, so please just stick around. So he calls me while I'm putting my son to bed, and I see the missed call, and I see that he called. So I was like, you know what? I'll call him back. I decided this time to take another phone with a recording device on it, and I recorded the call. All I can say is that the next 2 hours of this conversation was very, very, very dark and very, very disgusting, to the point that I had never ever thought that something like this was even real. I had actually had to listen to true evil, complete evil. The man, throughout the call, I placated everything because I wanted to find out as much information as I could, because obviously he was lying in the first call. He lied about his name. He lied about a lot of stuff. So in the second call that I recorded, he went on to tell me that the actual girl in question was his own daughter, that his daughter had been pregnant before. That was the girl who liked gymnastics, and that she was fairly young. Like, from the end of the call, I realized that the girl in question would be anywhere between grade 7 and grade 10. So you have to understand that the girl is in immediate danger, and this father, aka the grandfather of this child, was truly disturbed. And I was disgusted by everything I heard, but I knew that I had to get as much information as I could, like where he worked, what he did, how long this has been going on, etc., etc. I won't go into more details. Overall, by the end of this call, I knew that I was in a direct situation that I had to report this incestual pedophilia. And it's not something that I've ever done. It's not something that I understand. But I was truly disgusted, and I was reeling that night. Like, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was just like, did I just hear what I heard? Did I just go through what I just went through? Did I just partake in this? And all I kept saying to myself was, like, okay, I've got the recording. I'm going to deal with this in the morning. I'm going to figure it out. The next morning, I speak to my mom, And my mom goes, what about us? And I'm like, what do you mean? And my mom goes, well, obviously this guy's not okay, and obviously this guy can find you and Luca. Have you thought about that? And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't. Because I was, thinking solely of the little girl and thinking solely about how I could help her. And that's all I could think in my mind. But my mom posed this to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about this. So you have to understand, another day goes by, or as the day's going by, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think that this person could find us, because he might be angered at the fact that I made this call to the police. As I'm leaving my house to go do a session, I ended up taking an Uber. And I'm in this Uber, and I go in Ubers a lot because I don't have a car. I saved up for one, and I'm going to buy one. And for some reason, this particular Uber decides to drive through the yellow while these left turners are going through. We miss this left turner by like centimeters. This car's coming in a T-bone. I don't have my seatbelt on because I never do ride with one. And I literally saw like the whole slow-mo, like almost nearing a huge collision that day. I go to my session, I do what I gotta do, and it's like I come back and all I can think about is the fact that, like, should I put this report in? Obviously they're gonna have to investigate. Obviously, even if they press charges, this guy will get bail and be out until trial is over. So I could potentially have this very because he did describe in the conversation that he's abusive. So I knew that he was quick to abuse. And I was like, okay, this is quite scary. So that night, I decided to take the name that he gave me from the payment, which was not the name he gave me originally. And I look him up on Facebook. He's the only one with this name in all of Facebook. There's 3 profiles with the same name, but it's the same guy. And he has the most scariest face, like a Dahmer looking face. If you don't know who Dahmer is, he was a serial killer. And he is a hunter who talks about hunting moose. And a lot of his posts had to do with little girls. So I knew in my heart of hearts, this was the guy. So here I am, in this head flux going, oh my gosh, if I report this guy, and I knew I had to report this guy, right? There was no doubt in my mind, but I was like, finding the momentum. And, as a single person, I never would have even flinched. I would have just gone straight there. But the minute my mom told me that, saying like, you could be endangering us, was when I had to like really think about it a little harder. How do I protect myself? How do I protect my son? How do I protect my mom, from this potential dangerous, incestual pedophile, crazy person? Because I was just like, if he's willing to say all this to me, he's obviously not all okay. So I let that run through my mind that night, and I couldn't sleep. That night, I have one of the most insane dreams I've ever had. It was the same type of 4D situation I always have, where I'm, saving people in the, the lesser colored 4D. And at the very end of the dream, I'm met like out of nowhere. Like, and it wasn't even out of nowhere. It's like, because in the 4D, it's just as tangible as the 3D. It's really, I can see my skin. I can see my bones. I can see my feet. If I stub my toe, I can, feel it. It's very realistic. I am coming down the stairs of a house that I had just gone to put somebody in, and I turn around and I'm met at the end of those stairs with a very ferocious lion. And the rest of this 4-dimensional place is a little darker in nature. It's not as brightfully colored as the rest. However, this lion is in technicolor. This lion is in full color. And I am met at the end of these stairs. And I just stood there and I was like, I can't run. I can't turn around and go back into this house. My only option is to go and potentially see if the lion will let me pass. And it was kind of like the same moment I had in that Uber when my life flashed, when I was like, all I said in the Uber was, this is it. And I let it go. And just like that, with the lion, I said, this is it. And my decision was to go try to pet it and know that I was going to die anyways. So I couldn't run, I couldn't scream. I just said, okay, I'm going to die by lion, and I might as well give it a try to give it a hug, because I've always wanted to hug a lion. So I was meeting death in that dream as well. And I get up the next day and my mind's still reeling. I get a call and my dad's on the end of the line and he's like, your Uncle Joe just died. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's intense, because he got diagnosed with cancer about a month ago and he fell asleep on the couch and just died. And my Uncle Joe, like, I know him quite well. He was a great man. And it was kind of sad to hear that he went. But if you have ever watched anyone die from cancer, and I've watched like 5 people in my life die from cancer, it's one of the most brutal things to ever see, because it just breaks you down piece by piece by piece. And I sat there and I was like, wow, I'm like, so much is happening to me in these little short period of time, that it was a lot to process. It was a lot to take in. It was too much, in fact. So the next day, I just sat in all of this. I still have to take care of my son. I still have to do everything I have to do. And at the same time, I'm like, how am I going to approach this whole thing with the cops, So how do I protect myself before I do what I'm about to do? So I ended up reaching out to a criminal lawyer I know, and I ended up reaching out to a psychotherapist I know, and I was like asking them, like, what can I do? What should I do? Is there anything I should look out for? And they both gave me very solid advice. The criminal lawyer basically just told me exactly what I thought was going to happen, because like, I was in law, so I know civil procedure. You press charges, they post bail, and then they're out until trial, basically. And so the fact that I would have this man in my city somewhere, even with a restraining order, didn't really make me feel safe. I'm a single mom with a little boy, and I was like, this guy has rifles potentially in his house and he kills game, so I was like, okay. So I'm literally in my house crying on my knees to God, saying like, I'll do whatever I got to do. I know I got to save this little girl. I know I have to do what's right, but I don't want to risk my son and my mom. And I'm like, I really don't want to do all this, but I'm going to do what I'm asked to do, not just because God's asking me. Obviously, it's just the right thing to do. It's like I felt like in some way, like I was, in one way, sacrificing my son to save another. And at the same time, it's because of my son that I would save this girl too, because as a mom, it was even more gut-wrenching to have to know that some little girl out there was being treated like this, right? So I told myself, after talking to these guys, I'm like, you know what? I just got to go to the cops. I just got to get this done. But that night that I was crying out to Mother Mary. I was crying out to Mother God, okay, because God's both feminine and masculine. And I was just like, this is so hard, because as a mom, I want to protect my son at all costs. And the fact that I'm about to step into jeopardization kills me, because I feel like I'm in this crux situation. I feel like I'm in this catch-22. And then at the same time, all I heard Mother God say was like, would you genuinely think that I would ever endanger you? I would ever risk anything like not only for your son, but for you. And that washed over my heart. And I knew that I was protected and loved, and I needed to just move forward with what I had to do. And then the next morning it sprung on me. I was like, here I am. I'm about to do one of the scariest things I've ever had to do, because I don't know how this can go. I know that it takes about 1 to 3 years for a procedure like this to go through, actual process of the whole trial, etc. And I was like, wow, I'm actually staring at the precipice of, having to look behind my back for 3 years. And the minute I said that, I was just like, I am going to do it. I'm going to do it. I just said, I just need the strength, guys. I just need the strength. I'm like, I just don't like the idea that I have to put everyone at risk in order to do this. And all of a sudden, my left side of my ear just started burning, burning like I've never felt before, like as if somebody put kerosene on my ear and just lit it on fire. I've had chiming before, but I've never had my ear on fire, like literal fire. And it was like as if everyone on the other side was just screaming, like not in a bad way, but like in another way, like, you're fine, And then I heard it again, the initiation. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I didn't know what it meant. I had no clue. I wasn't anyone aware of what I was going through. And then the next day, I go do what I got to do. I just head right into that police station, and I speak to an officer, and I tell her everything. I tell her that I have this 2-hour recording, and it is what it is. Let the chips fall where they may. And again, I heard that word, the initiation, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I just knew I was doing the right thing, and it didn't matter. I was going to be okay, and I just had to move forward and surrender everything that I was, because that was the exact thing I asked God for. I had said to God, I was like, please don't put me in a position that endangers my son and my mom. And here I am 2 years later in the exact position to endanger my son and my mom, seemingly anyways. And I was terrified, because it would be by my decision and by my doing, in a sense, because I would be the one reporting it. So therefore, I would be the one jeopardizing them. And in the same hand, I knew as a social justice warrior for God, for anyone, I had to do what I had to do. So there was no way around it. It must be done. I must surrender to the all once again, even though it was putting me in the exact position I asked not to be in. But it had every justification to be so. So I tell her everything. My heart sinks, because I know what I'm staring at. 45 minutes goes by, an hour goes by, hour and 15 minutes goes by. The clock's just winding down. I have no clue what's happening, and it's taking a really long time to find out. She finally returns, and she says to me, hey, she's like, I've got good news. And I was like, yeah? I'm like, pray tell me what this good news is, please. And she goes, you're not the first one. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you're the 13th. And I was like, the 13th? She's like, yeah. She's like, this guy doesn't have a daughter. And I was like, what? And she's like, no. She's like, it's all fabricated. And I'm like, what? She's like, he tells and perfects this story specifically for life coaches, psychics, mediums, anyone sort of in that profession. And you're the 13th across Canada, the first in Toronto, but across Canada, you're the 13th. And I was like, holy what? I'm like, what? I'm like, this guy lies about being an incestual pedophile who, attends, orgy parties and, basically puts up his daughter for, sexual favors. Like all the things this man said were based off of memories. It was like innuendos. Like this guy could pull scenarios that occurred, places that they occurred at. It was so in depth and it was so descriptive that I was like, there's no way. There's no way that there couldn't be a little girl. Or, and she goes, no. She's like, we've checked him out. He just lives in his mother's basement and he is just sick. He just makes up this story and he's perfected it and he's been doing it for years and telling people, but within Canada, you're the 13th. And I was just like, thank you. Like some part of me was like, holy, thank God. And then the other part of me was like, what? I had like 1,000 more questions because I was like, I just couldn't believe that somebody perfected this and fantasized so deeply about a little girl that doesn't exist, so much so that he doesn't even have. And then on top of it, should if he had had one, this is what he would have done to her. It was very sick. So I come home. It kind of lacks the pizzazz, that I thought, but I was so grateful. And I was so at ease. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to go through 3 years of this. But I just sat there so befuddled. Like my son was playing around with my mom and I was just sitting on the couch, like, in a daze. And I was like, did this just happen to me? I literally went through this week of hell, like just like torment of my soul. And I just knew that I just had to surrender something that was so terrifying to me because it had nothing to do with just me. It might have risked my son and my mom. It was just so gut-wrenching and no sleep, no food. It was just so tough to have it all result in some man sick, twisted get off of poking fun or whatever the case may be. And as I sat in that daze, I was just like, why? Why would somebody do this? And then again, all I heard was the initiation. And I was just like, what? And then, ironically, I don't know if you guys ever watched The Gentleman. It's this movie about spies. And there's they have to go to this spy tryout or this spy initiation, and they're asked to do all these trials, kind of like Men in Black, right? When Will Smith has to do all these trials, it's similar. And what happens is that there's this one initiation request that they have to do. They have to pick a puppy, train a puppy for several weeks, right? And they grow an attachment to the puppy. And then when the next ask of them is that ultimately they have to kill the puppy or they won't get in. It's the last test they have to do because they have to know, like, you have to be, like, basically what they're posed in is like, oh, you have to be able to give up everything to be a spy, everything you love and everything that's dear to you. And the guy in question that the whole movie's based on, out of all the initiates, he was the only one that couldn't kill the puppy. He just wouldn't kill the puppy. And ironically, that was the right answer. Whereas the other persons that all killed the puppy, not to say that they didn't get in, but it was something about him not killing the puppy that just like made him just like that much more interesting or that much more wanted by the organization. And in some ways, when I saw that vision of that scene in the movie, I kind of understood what all took place 2 years ago when I had asked God, I'll do anything you ask of me. God actually put me in a situation that was going to test the firmament, the actual embodiment of all that I am, and put me up against all that I am. And that's what the initiation was. Could I stand firm? Would I sacrifice one for the other? Would I, directly and boldly do what needed to be done, regardless of the repercussions? Do what is actually right, regardless of what may occur? And the reason why this is so important to understand is that it truly makes me understand what is taking place in these next years. I know you guys may or may not have watched my videos, but this is a very important one. All that is to befall the world before Yeshua shows up is not going to be easy. Some of us are going to crumble when it gets too hard. Some of us are not going to surrender everything we're supposed to surrender. And I truly feel like this was one of those tests. Because when the time comes and society tells you that you can't travel, when society tells you to take another shot or to take another vaccine to fit into society, or, ostracizes you because you don't fit in, or ostracizes you because you're not part of the cryptocurrency, or you don't have the mark of the beast in order to buy and sell. Will you stand firm in all that you are? And I feel like this test was my first test in that world. All the previous trials were juvenile compared to this one, because none of them had to risk anything that really mattered to me. And this particular initiation test did. And as the years come, we're going to get more difficult initiations. Ones where we won't falter. Ones where we cannot deny Yeshua and all that he stood for. We too may have to do the same things and be put up against the same hardships as Jesus in order to be initiated into his wisdom, into his grace, to be part of his flock, to actually do what we have to do, because it hasn't been easy so far. And I know everyone's always like, let's keep things fluffy and about love, but sometimes love is one of the hardest things to defend. If it wasn't, then we would have figured it out by now. Loving oneself, standing for what you truly believe in, knowing that it may not be part of the norm or part of what all of society deems to be correct. If it's not correct in your heart, will you fight for that? Even if it means giving up mostly what you love, or it jeopardizes what you love. Are you willing to do it? And I think that's what this was. So, for all of you out there, the initiation tests that have been started will be putting you in positions where you may have to make very tough decisions. And it'll tell you a lot about who you are, and it will tell you a lot about staring at death and being okay with it. I don't want to sugarcoat any of this because I can't be the only one going through this. I would have rather broken my ankle again and have my bones set again than have to go through that decision I just made. And I'm sorry I had to tell you guys this very elongated story to get my point across. But it was to show you guys what it meant to me. Because to jeopardize the safety of my son was the one thing that I prayed would never come to my door. And it did. And now that I've been on this journey so long and surrendering has become so normal, I feel Spirit had to take it one step further because, much like Mary, she had to give up her own son in order to follow God's plan. And I don't want to make anyone scared, but sometimes I feel like that's what we're going to have to be prepared for. To know that we will be okay and to know that it's all part of it. So I am sorry I spent all this time explaining, but I couldn't give the story enough depth and gravity without describing the play-by-play. So if you are being initiated in April, I think it's happening this month. It's probably going to keep happening or may happen more times because I think Yeshua's return is imminent and the initiation is underway to determine who's going to make the cut, because this is not for the light of heart what is to come. Will we knuckle under? Will we follow suit? Will we defy and turn away from Yeshua? That's going to be the challenge. So many of his disciples did it the last time, and he still didn't find fault with them. Some of them were crucified. Some of them were killed ravenously for their belief in Yeshua. And I'm not trying to scare anyone, but I don't think that standing up for what we believe in, because still to come is the false prophet. Still to come is a whole bunch of other things in Revelations. There will be an Antichrist. There will be false miracles. There will be the mark of the beast put upon the earth. And will we have the gumption to refuse it, to reject it, to fight for Yeshua and believe in the true teachings, to discern, to guide persons away from all that is false? And how can we do that if we're not willing to give up everything that we are, to surrender all that we are to this cause? So, if you're being initiated too, it's going to come with a scare. It's going to shake you up to your core. And I pray that all my brothers and sisters out there pass the test as well. I don't know how many there are. This first one was a doozy, and I really am not looking forward to the rest. But at least I know now that I'm capable of it. Have a good one. Love you lots. Bye for now.